My name is Megan. I'm 32 years old. That Christmas, my 7-year-old daughter Mia stood in front of the laden table. She had chosen a sparkly golden dress and held a small gift box. All the adults in the room were laughing and toasting, engrossed in their conversations, not noticing the small figure, except for me. My eyes were fixed on her. Mia looked directly at her grandmother, discreetly held up the box, and declared, "Grandma, Dad told me to give you this if you ignored me again." The chatter ceased. Forks paused midair, and the music dissolved into a distant hum. Mia's grandmother, my husband's mother, forced a confused smile, as if she thought it was a joke. But when she opened the box, the laughter turned into a scream. A guttural, high-pitched sound tore through the room, louder than the Christmas carols, louder than our own gasps, louder than the silence that followed. People rushed to see the contents, but I already knew. My husband had prepared that box months earlier. He told me it was for the day his mother went too far. That day was now. Let me tell you how we got to this point. How my daughter became invisible in a sea of presents, and how that small box shattered every fake smile that had held this family together for years. When I married Andrew, I believed I was joining a large, loving family. They were loud, close-knit, always hosting barbecues, game nights, and holiday parties. His mother, Emma, was the center of it all. Her voice could silence a room, and she had an opinion on every subject. I thought that was how strong women led their families. I respected her and genuinely wanted her to like me. At first, she acted like she did. She'd smile at dinners, praise my cooking, hug me goodbye. But it wasn't long before I noticed a subtle shift. She would forget to include me in family group chats or comment on how I was different from the women in their family, how I hadn't grown up with the same values. It was always delicate, just enough to make me question if I was imagining things. Then came Mia. She's my daughter from my first marriage. She was 2 years old when Andrew entered our lives. He didn't hesitate. He embraced her with patience, love, and all the care a father should give. When we married, he legally adopted her. We never used the word stepdaughter in our home. She was his daughter in all the important ways, and he was her dad. But Emma never accepted it. In the beginning, she pretended. She'd send Mia a birthday card or bring a small gift to parties. However, the difference was always visible. Mia wasn't invited to cousin sleepovers, nor was she included in matching Christmas pajamas. She'd sit quietly during family events while the other grandchildren were pampered. Emma would call Nora her little princess, buy David his favorite sports equipment, and then hand Mia a plastic toy or a book she clearly had never looked at. Mia noticed. Children always notice. I tried to explain. I told Mia that Grandma was just forgetful, that she loved her in her own way. But with each passing year, it became harder to justify. On Thanksgiving, Emma gave each grandchild a personalized plate with their name painted in gold. Mia's place setting had one of the extra plates, pulled from the back of the cupboard. That night, Mia whispered to me, "Maybe she thinks I'm just visiting." I didn't know what to say. Andrew heard it too. He didn't speak, but I saw his jaw tighten. It was the first time I thought he might be starting to see it too. Even so, we continued to show up. I told myself it was for the greater good, for family unity, for tradition, so Mia would grow up with cousins and party memories. I convinced myself that love didn't need to be proven with gifts or matching pajamas. But deep down, I was lying to myself. I stayed silent because I didn't want to be seen as the problem. I didn't want to make Andrew choose between his mother and me. And each time I swallowed my hurt, I convinced myself I was doing the right thing for Mia, that being the bigger person would teach her something important. But I didn't realize I was teaching her that being treated as less was something we had to accept. Andrew and I argued about it more than once. I'd bring it up in low, exhausted voices after Mia was in bed. He'd say he noticed, but he didn't know how to handle it. He didn't want to hurt his mother. I'd ask, "What about Mia?" He'd nod, promise to talk to her eventually, and then retreat into silence. When this particular Christmas arrived, I was emotionally drained. I had laid out matching outfits for the kids. I brought extra cookies to share. I wrapped thoughtful gifts for everyone in the family. I told myself, this year might be different. But something inside me had also changed. I was no longer seeking approval. I was watching, waiting, preparing for the moment when staying silent would no longer be the kind thing to do. And that moment arrived sooner than I expected. It was Emma's smile as she handed Nora a brand new iPad, the way she kissed David's cheek before giving him a thick envelope of cash. Then she turned to Mia, handed her a lavender candle, and said, "I didn't want you to feel completely left out." That's when I looked at Andrew. He didn't speak, he didn't flinch, but something in his face shifted. And that's when I knew. He hadn't forgotten what he had told me a month ago. He hadn't forgotten the box. Neither had she. Emma's house was always immaculate during the holidays. A huge artificial tree that reached the ceiling, decorated with golden ornaments and twinkling lights. Every branch looked like it came out of a catalog. The fireplace was lit, the table set with fine china, and so many wrapped presents under the tree that you could barely see the base. It should have been magical, but as soon as we walked in, I felt my stomach clench. Mia walked in front of me, her curls bouncing with each step, wearing the golden dress she had chosen herself. She held a small wrapped gift in her hands, the one she had made for Emma in art class, a small wooden box painted with tiny rhinestones glued on. She had written Grandma in glittery, crooked letters on the lid. She was so proud. Emma barely looked at her when we greeted each other. She hugged Nora and David immediately, laughing loudly and commenting on how much they were growing. She handed Nora a small velvet pouch and winked. "Don't open it yet," she said, smiling. Then she turned to Mia and said, "Hi, sweetie, you look festive." She glanced quickly at the gift in Mia's hand, took it without really looking, and placed it on a side table as if it were a napkin someone had handed her by mistake. Mia didn't say anything. She looked at me for a moment, then sat on the sofa next to Nora. The children talked and played while the adults made small talk. I sat on the sidelines of it all, watching my daughter slowly diminish into the background of her own family. After dinner, it was time for presents. Emma always made it a production. She'd sit in her armchair and hand them out one by one, calling each child as if they were royalty. David was first. He opened an envelope stuffed with cash. Everyone applauded. Nora came next. She opened a new iPad and a matching set of bracelets, made of silver and real crystals. She hugged Emma so tightly that the iPad almost slipped from her hands. Then Emma called Mia's name. There was a long pause before she held up a small gift bag and said, "This is for you, dear. I didn't want you to feel completely left out." Mia silently stood up, walked over, and took the bag. Inside, there was a lavender-scented candle in a plain glass jar. There was a tag attached that read, "For Andrew's girl." That was it. No envelope, no toy, no sparkle. Just a candle and a tag that felt like a stab. I looked at Andrew. He was staring at the floor, his fingers tightly intertwined, his jaw tense. He didn't say a word. Mia sat next to me, placing the candle in her lap. She didn't cry, she didn't frown, but I could see her slowly closing off, the kind of silence that stays with a child long after the day is over. Emma moved on as if nothing had happened. She handed out more presents. Everyone laughed, ate dessert, toasted with champagne, but I wasn't really hearing any of it. I couldn't take my eyes off Mia. She remained polite, said a soft thank you to Emma when asked, and feigned interest in the bracelet Nora was showing off. Later, in the kitchen, I confronted Andrew. "You need to say something," I whispered. "She called your daughter Andrew's girl, as if she's a guest here." He didn't respond immediately. Then he said, "I told Mia to give her the box if that happened again. I told her she could decide when it was time." I looked at him. "Are you serious?" He nodded. She remembers. In the car, on the way home, Mia sat quietly in the back seat, holding her candle. Her voice was small when she asked, "Is Grandma mad at me?" I turned around and reached for her, but Andrew spoke first. "No, honey," he said, "Grandma just forgot something important." He paused and added, "But I think she's about to remember." Mia looked at the box in her lap, the one Andrew had given her months earlier, wrapped in plain red paper. She nodded once and said, "Then I want to give it to her tomorrow." It was then that I knew this wasn't just another moment of being ignored that we would let slide. It wouldn't be another lesson in patience or polite silence. Something was changing. My daughter would no longer be invisible. Not anymore. When we got home that night, I helped Mia out of the car while Andrew grabbed the leftover cookies from the back seat. She held the candle in one hand and the small box in the other, both wrapped like fragile memories. I could tell she held more than just the weight of her things. She was quiet, but her face showed something calm and firm, as if she had already made a decision. I asked if she wanted to take a bath or watch a movie before bed. She said no, she just wanted to get ready for tomorrow. I paused. What's tomorrow? She looked at me as if I should know. Brunch at Grandma's. I'm going to give her the box. It was the first time I felt my breath catch in my chest, not from fear, but from the simple certainty in her voice. There was no hesitation, no question, just a decision made by a 7-year-old who had finally seen enough. Andrew walked into the room while I was brushing Mia's hair. She looked at him and asked, "Can I still give it to her?" He nodded. "It's your choice, Mia." I said that from the beginning. She smiled, but it wasn't the usual bubbly smile she gave when we promised ice cream or said we were going to the zoo. It was smaller, more focused, as if she understood the weight of what she was carrying, as if she knew what it meant to be heard. After she went to bed, I finally asked Andrew what exactly he had put in that box. He sat across from me at the kitchen table and looked exhausted, as if he had held back a storm for too long. "A few months ago, I was watching her play with Nora during David's birthday party," he said. "They were all in the backyard. Emma called the kids for cake. Nora and David got slices with extra frosting and sprinkles. Mia got the corner slice. No decoration, no candle, nothing." I remembered that day. I had tried to convince myself it hadn't been intentional. "She came up to me and asked if she was anyone's cousin too," he continued. "That night, I sat down and wrote a letter. I printed the adoption papers again. I packed the box. And I told Mia she could give it to my mother if she made her feel like she didn't belong again." My throat tightened. "And you never told me?" "I didn't want to start a fight," he said. "I didn't want to drag you into another argument about my family. But I needed Mia to know I saw it. I needed her to feel like she had something to lean on." I spent years waiting for Andrew to speak up, years waiting for him to draw a line. And here he was, having drawn that line silently, not with shouts or confrontations, but by giving his daughter the power to say enough. The next morning, Mia got dressed as if it were school picture day. She asked if she could wear her sparkly golden dress again. She wanted to redo her curls. She chose the same shiny tiara she wore the day Andrew signed the adoption papers. She didn't say it was for good luck. She didn't need to. I knew. In the car, she held the red box in her lap with both hands, motionless, with no ulterior motives. When we arrived at Emma's house, everything looked the same. The same wreath on the door, the same smell of cinnamon and ham, the same polite greetings and empty compliments. But something felt different this time, not in the room, just in us. We were no longer visitors trying to fit in. We were a family walking in with our truth. Mia sat quietly during brunch. She didn't touch her plate much. Emma praised Nora's dress 3 times. She didn't mention Mia's once. When everyone finished eating and started passing desserts, Mia stood up. No one noticed at first. Then she walked to the head of the table, right where Emma was sitting with her wine glass, and placed the box in front of her. "Grandma," she said clearly, "Dad told me to give you this if you ignored me again." The room went silent. Emma gave a small, confused laugh. "What is this, dear?" Mia didn't answer. She took a step back and sat down. Andrew reached for my hand under the table and held it tight. The box was still closed, but not for long. Emma picked up the box as if it were a joke. She turned it in her hands, raised an eyebrow, and gave a half-laugh that didn't match the silence spreading across the table. Everyone was watching now. Andrew's sister looked confused. Nora watched intently. David continued eating a cookie, not understanding what was happening. Emma peeled off the red wrapping paper slowly, as if she were performing for the room. But her smile vanished the moment she opened the lid. On top, there was a photo in a white frame. It was of Andrew in a hospital chair holding Mia on the day she turned 2. She had cake on her cheeks and her arms around his neck. Someone had taken it during her adoption party. The caption, written in gold at the bottom, read, "Day 1, Dad." Below the photo, there was a sealed envelope. Emma's face changed. Her mouth tightened as she reached out and opened the envelope with trembling hands. She pulled out the first document. It was a copy of Mia's adoption papers, legal, signed by a judge, with Andrew's name clearly printed under father. The court seal was stamped at the bottom. She blinked hard, as if perhaps if she looked again, it would say something different. But it didn't. Next, she unfolded a letter. It was written in Andrew's handwriting. He didn't flinch as she began to read, but I felt his grip on my fingers under the table. Emma's lips moved as she read silently, her face falling with each word. It read, "Mom, if you're reading this, it means you've hurt my daughter again. Not just mine by love, but mine by law, by promise, and by choice. I've spent years watching you treat Mia like a stranger. I waited for it to change. I waited for you to open your heart as I did. But if she had to give you this box, it means she saw what I saw, that you don't consider her real. Mia is my daughter. She is your granddaughter. And if you can't love her equally, then you don't love me. I will not allow her to grow up thinking she has to earn a place in this family. She already belongs. Always has. If you can't accept that, you will no longer be welcome in our home or our lives. Andrew." When she finished reading, Emma let the letter drop onto the table as if it had burned her fingers. Her face was pale. She looked around, searching for someone to save her. No one spoke. Then, as if something inside her had broken, she screamed. Not a sob, not a gasp. A raw, high-pitched scream, as if a curtain had been torn away from everything she had pretended to be. She stood up so fast that her chair scraped on the wooden floor. Nora flinched. David froze. Emma's sister reached out to steady the table, but Emma had already backed away, muttering, "I can't believe you would embarrass me like this." Andrew finally stood up. "We didn't embarrass you," he said. "You did that yourself." Emma pointed at me. "This is her doing. This girl turned you against your own mother." I stood up too. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't need to. "No," I said. "Mia gave you a gift. She gave you a chance to see her. You chose not to." For a moment, all that could be heard was the sound of the fireplace crackling. Mia sat quietly, watching, not scared, not confused, just observing the truth unfold. Andrew turned to her and held out his hand, ready to go. She nodded and stood up. I grabbed our coats and helped her put hers on. No one stopped us. No one said goodbye. We left together, me, my husband, and our daughter, leaving behind the house full of decorations, perfect centerpieces, and empty approval. In the car, Mia buckled her seatbelt and looked straight ahead. She didn't say anything immediately. Then, softly, she asked, "Do you think she read the whole letter?" Andrew looked at her in the rearview mirror and said, "Every word." Mia smiled, not a big, dramatic smile, just enough to tell me that something inside her had settled. Not because Emma had changed, but because she no longer needed her to change. We didn't go back to Emma's house after that day. There were no more forced birthday parties, no more strained holidays, no more pretense. There were no angry text messages or emotional phone calls. Just silence. She didn't reach out to us, and we didn't reach out to her. For the first time, there was peace. At first, I thought Mia might ask about her. I expected questions, perhaps some sadness. But what I saw instead was a quiet freedom. She stopped watching the door during family events. She stopped asking why she didn't get the same presents or why her name was left out of group projects. She stopped measuring her worth by someone else's treatment. Something had changed. One afternoon, a week after Christmas, a small padded envelope arrived in the mail. It was addressed to Mia. Inside, there was a silver bracelet with a small heart charm and a handwritten note from Nora. It read, "I'm sorry Grandma was mean. You're my cousin forever. I picked this out with my allowance." Mia read the note twice, then slid the bracelet onto her wrist. She didn't ask if she could wear it every day. She simply wore it. That single act meant more to her than a dozen expensive gifts ever could. It reminded me that children don't need perfection. They just need to feel chosen. They need to know that someone sees them, hears them, and believes they matter. As for Andrew, something changed in him too. For years, he carried the guilt of being caught between his mother and his daughter. He tried to unite two worlds that would never truly meet. But after that brunch, I saw something different in his eyes. Not just resolve, but relief. He had made his choice. He chose Mia without apology, without conditions, and without regret. One night, before we went to sleep, he looked at me and said, "I should have done this sooner." "You did it exactly when she needed it," I told him. We started making new traditions. Smaller, slower, more intentional. Mia helped us decorate cookies for the neighbors. We built pillow forts and watched movies in pajamas. We didn't try to replace what was lost. We just focused on building what was real. People talk about cutting ties with toxic family members as if it's easy, as if it's a clean line you draw and move on. It's not. It hurts, even when it's necessary, even when you're right. But what hurts more is seeing your child shrink to make space for someone else's comfort. I won't do that again. I won't ask my daughter to keep accepting less just because someone else refuses to give more. That day at Emma's table wasn't about drama or revenge. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about Mia taking up her space in a room where she had always been treated as a guest. It was about her saying, "I belong here," even when someone tried to make her feel like she didn't. And it was about us, her parents, finally supporting her with more than just words. Mia never talks about the box again. She doesn't need to. But I kept it. It's in a drawer in my bedroom, right next to her first baby shoes and the hospital bracelet from the day she was born. I keep it not because I want to remember the pain, but because I want to remember the strength it took to face it. The strength in her voice, the quiet power in her choice. She's only 7, but she taught me something I'll carry forever. Family isn't about who makes the biggest show of love when people are watching. It's not about who shares your last name or your blood type. Family is about who shows up when it matters, who protects you when it's hard, who makes you feel safe when the rest of the world makes you feel small. Mia has that now. Not because someone gave it to her, but because she claimed it for herself. And in doing so, she gave it to us too. Thank you for listening to Megan's story. Let us know what you thought of this story in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. If you liked this story, please like and share this video to touch more people, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories.